Elvis Presley was found face down, unresponsive, on his bathroom floor. His autopsy revealed a staggering cocktail of 14 different drugs in his system. For years, his personal physician had prescribed thousands upon thousands of pills in Elvis's name. The king of rock and roll, at only 42, was suffering from a host of severe health problems usually seen in much older men. His final hours were spent awake, unable to sleep, planning future tours while battling chronic pain and illness. Number 11. His final hours weren't spent resting. You might imagine the king of rock and roll spending his last night peacefully sleeping, perhaps dreaming of his next big performance or relaxing after years in the spotlight. But the reality of Elvis Presley's final hours was far from serene. Instead of rest, his night was marked by restlessness, activity, and attempts to soothe both physical pain and an apparent inability to wind down. On the evening of August 15, 1977, Elvis didn't go straight to bed after returning to Graceland around midnight from a late-night dental appointment. The appointment itself was unusual, visiting his dentist, Dr. Lester Hoffman, after 10:30 p.m. to deal with persistent tooth pain for which he received temporary fillings. Pain relief, even for something as common as a toothache, was a constant theme in his later life. Back at Graceland, in the early hours of August 16th, Elvis was anything but ready for sleep. He was known to be a nocturnal creature. His body clock often flipped, but this night seemed particularly active. Reports from those present, including his fiancée Ginger Alden, his cousin Billy Smith, and his wife Jo, paint a picture of a man trying to stay occupied. He chatted with his entourage, discussing plans for his upcoming tour, scheduled to start just a day later in Portland, Maine. He even played the piano in his jungle room, singing a couple of gospel songs, including Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, which would hauntingly become some of the last notes he ever sang. Around 4 a.m., still wide awake, Elvis decided to play racquetball with Billy and Jo on his private court at Graceland. This wasn't a strenuous workout. Accounts suggest it was a light-hearted game, perhaps another attempt to distract himself or burn off energy. During the game, while attempting a playful shot, he reportedly hit himself in the shin with his racket, jokingly complaining about it. The game ended abruptly, however, not because of fatigue, but seemingly due to a lack of coordination or perhaps a moment of frustration. Even after the racquetball, sleep wouldn't come. He took prepackaged packets of prescription medications prepared by his nurses or aides. These packets contained a mix of pills intended to help him sleep and manage various ailments. The exact combination he took that final night is part of the larger medical mystery, but it was routine for him to take multiple medications simultaneously. Ginger Alden later recalled him taking at least 2 separate packets of pills during the night. Sometime between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., still unable to sleep, Elvis told Ginger he was going into his lavish bathroom suite to read. This was not unusual. His bathroom was more like a private lounge, equipped with chairs, reading material, and a telephone. He took a book with him, The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus by Franco Adams. This choice of reading material offers a glimpse into his spiritual interests, a side often overshadowed by his public persona. He assured Ginger not to fall asleep while he was reading, a phrase that would later take on a poignant weight. She drifted off to sleep, expecting him to return shortly. He never did. His final conscious hours were not spent in peaceful slumber, but in a state of wakefulness, engaging in casual activities, dealing with physical discomfort, taking multiple medications and seeking solace in reading, all while the machinery of his body was quietly reaching its breaking point. The image of Elvis, unable to find rest even in his own sanctuary just hours before his death, is a stark contrast to the energetic performer the world adored. It digs the deep-seated issues, both physical and perhaps psychological, that plagued him in his final years, making his last night a telling prelude to the tragedy that morning would bring. Number 10. The book he was reading when he died. The image is stark. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, discovered unresponsive in his bathroom. But what adds another layer of unexpected detail to this scene is the book he was reportedly reading, or at least had taken with him in those final moments. It wasn't a music magazine, a Hollywood script, or a light novel. According to accounts particularly from Ginger Alden, who was the last person to see him conscious, the book Elvis carried into the bathroom was The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus by Franco Adams. This specific detail often surprises people. Elvis, known for his swiveling hips, dazzling jumpsuits, and rock and roll anthems, had a deeply spiritual side, particularly drawn to gospel music and religious exploration. Throughout his life, he collected books on religion, philosophy, and the occult. His Graceland library contained numerous volumes on various faiths and spiritual quests. Friends and associates often spoke of his late-night conversations about the meaning of life, death, and the existence of God. He frequently wore religious symbols, including a cross and a Star of David, expressing a broad sense of spirituality. The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus delves into the history and forensic analysis of the Shroud of Turin, the linen cloth believed by many to be the burial shroud of Jesus Christ, bearing his image. The book explores scientific investigations, carbon dating controversies, though some key dating results came after the book's publication and Elvis's death, and attempts to reconstruct the face based on the image on the shroud. It's a topic that blends faith, history, and scientific inquiry, exactly the kind of subject matter that fascinated Elvis in his quest for deeper meaning. The fact that this was his chosen reading material, as he sought quiet solitude in the early morning hours, speaks volumes about his state of mind. It suggests he wasn't just looking for a distraction, but perhaps seeking answers, comfort, or connection to something profound. In the context of his declining health and the pressures of his fame, it's plausible he was grappling with existential questions. The image of Elvis, a global icon, surrounded by luxury and adoration, yet privately engrossed in a book about the physical image of Jesus, is deeply poignant. While Ginger Alden found him unresponsive on the floor later that afternoon, the book was reportedly nearby. Some accounts place it on the floor beside him, others on a nearby surface. Regardless of its exact position, its presence adds a specific, humanizing detail to the scene of his death. It reminds us that behind the larger-than-life persona was a man with complex interests, spiritual curiosities, and, perhaps, a search for peace that eluded him until the very end. The book becomes a silent witness, a symbol of the private man and his final, quiet moments away from the roar of the crowd. It's a small detail often overlooked in the sensationalism surrounding his death, but one that offers a profound glimpse into the inner world of Elvis Presley. Number 9. His weight ballooned dramatically in his final year. The image of Elvis Presley, most often remembered, is the lean, energetic rock and roller of the 50s, or the sleek, black leather-clad comeback star of 1968. But the Elvis of 1977 was a starkly different figure. In the final year or two of his life, his weight fluctuated dramatically, often reaching levels that shocked fans and caused serious concern among his inner circle, contributing significantly to his overall poor health. By August 1977, Elvis reportedly weighed somewhere between 250 and 350 pounds. Different sources give different figures, and his weight did vary, but it was undeniably far removed from the physique of his youth. This significant weight gain wasn't just a cosmetic issue. It was a symptom and a cause of multiple severe health problems. His famous jumpsuits, custom-made for his performances, had to be constantly redesigned and let out to accommodate his increasing girth. He often wore capes on stage, which some speculated were partly intended to conceal his weight gain. What caused this dramatic change? It was a complex mix of factors. Elvis had always struggled with his weight, even in his younger years. But the problem spiraled out of control in the mid to late 1970s. His diet was notoriously unhealthy, filled with high-fat, high-calorie Southern comfort foods like fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches, cheeseburgers, fried chicken, and sugary drinks. Portion control was seemingly non-existent. Stories abound of him ordering vast quantities of food late at night. Compounding the poor diet was a lack of physical activity compared to his earlier, more energetic years. While he still performed, his movements on stage became more labored. Off stage, his lifestyle became increasingly sedentary, partly due to his nocturnal habits and the various physical ailments that plagued him. Pain from conditions like glaucoma, hypertension, and digestive issues likely discouraged exercise. Furthermore, the vast array of prescription medications he was taking could have contributed to weight gain, either directly as a side effect or indirectly by increasing lethargy, water retention, or appetite. Drugs like corticosteroids, sometimes used for inflammatory conditions, are known to cause weight gain and fluid retention. Sedatives and tranquilizers might have reduced his overall activity levels. The impact of this weight gain on his health was profound. It put immense strain on his heart, which was already enlarged, cardiomegaly. It contributed to his high blood pressure, hypertension. It likely exacerbated his digestive problems, including the severe constipation linked to megacolon. It made breathing more difficult and contributed to sleep disturbances, possibly including sleep apnea. His joints would have also been under increased stress. His appearance became a subject of public discussion and media scrutiny, which reportedly bothered him deeply, potentially creating a vicious cycle where discomfort led to more comfort eating. Photos and videos from his final concerts show a visibly heavier, often breathless, and sometimes unsteady performer. While he could still deliver powerful vocal performances, the physical toll was evident. Fans who saw him live during this period often expressed shock at his appearance compared to the vibrant star they remembered. This dramatic weight gain wasn't just about looks. It was a flashing red light signaling a body in deep distress. It was intertwined with his poor diet, medication use, and multiple underlying health conditions, creating a perfect storm that contributed significantly to his premature death at the age of 42. The shocking physical transformation serves as a visible marker of the internal struggles and health crises Elvis was facing in his final year. Number 8. 14 different drugs were dudded in his system. One of the most shocking and widely discussed aspects of Elvis Presley's death is the sheer number and variety of prescription drugs found in his body during the autopsy. The final toxicology report identified 14 different substances, 10 in significant quantities. This wasn't a case of one fatal overdose on a single drug, but rather a complex polypharmacy situation, the simultaneous use of multiple drugs that overwhelmed his already weakened system. The list of drugs found reads like a pharmacy inventory, primarily consisting of potent sedatives, painkillers, and stimulants. Key substances detected included codeine, an obent pain reliever, found at a level 10 times higher than the standard therapeutic dose. Elvis was known to have an allergy or intolerance to codeine, making its presence particularly concerning. Morphine, another powerful obeng analgesic. Methaqualone, Quaalude, a sedative hypnotic popular recreationally at the time, often used to induce sleep or euphoria. Avabam. Valium, a benzodiazepine used to treat anxiety, muscle spasms, and seizures, and also used as a sedative. Ethinomate, Valnid, a short-acting sedative hypnotic used for insomnia. Ethichlorvinol, Placital, another sedative hypnotic prescribed for insomnia. Pentobarbital, Nembutal, a barbiturate, a class of drugs used as sedatives or anesthetics. Phenobarbital, another barbiturate often used for seizures, but also having sedative effects. Butabarbital, a third type of barbiturate found, used as a sedative. Amobarbital, yet another barbiturate. Traces of other drugs were also reported, though potentially in less significant concentrations or possibly metabolites of the primary drugs. The presence of multiple barbiturates and sedatives, like Valium, Placital, Valmid, Quaalude, alongside potent opiates like codeine, points to a dangerous combination. These drugs all depress the central nervous system, particularly respiratory function. Taking them together exponentially increases the risk of respiratory arrest, coma, and death. The finding of codeine was particularly controversial. While prescribed for pain, possibly his toothache from the night before, some investigators, like toxicologist Dr. Cyril Wecht, who later reviewed the case, highlighted Elvis's known sensitivity to it, suggesting it could have played a critical role even if not the sole cause. This lethal cocktail wasn't necessarily ingested all at once in a single massive overdose. It represented the accumulation of drugs taken over the preceding hours, and possibly days, reflecting his long-term reliance on prescription medications to manage pain, sleep, mood, and the side effects of other drugs. He had developed a tolerance to many of these substances, meaning he needed higher doses to achieve the desired effect, further increasing the danger. The sheer number of different drugs shocked the public and fueled the debate about the cause of death. Was it a sudden heart attack exacerbated by the drugs, or was it primarily a drug-induced respiratory failure or cardiac event? The presence of so many powerful medications painted a grim picture of his dependence and the medical management he was receiving. It raised immediate questions about how one person could legally obtain and be prescribed such a vast and dangerous array of medications simultaneously. This toxicological finding remains a central and deeply disturbing fact in the narrative of Elvis's final days, highlighting a system both personal and medical that failed to prevent the tragedy. Number 7. The official cause of death was immediately questioned. Immediately following Elvis Presley's death on August 16, 1977, the official cause announced was cardiac arrhythmia, essentially an irregular heartbeat leading to cardiac arrest. The statement delivered by the Shelby County Medical Examiner, Dr. Jerry Francisco, emphasized that the drugs found in his system were not present in lethal doses and were secondary factors, suggesting his death was primarily due to natural causes related to heart disease and possibly hypertension. However, this official explanation was met with immediate skepticism and controversy, a debate that continues in some circles even today. Several factors fueled the questions. The toxicology report. While Dr. Francisco initially downplayed the role of drugs, the subsequent detailed toxicology report revealed the presence of 14 different drugs, 10 in significant quantities. This staggering number led many, including medical professionals and investigators who later reviewed the case, to argue that polypharmacy, the combined effect of multiple drugs, was the primary cause, or at least a major contributing factor, leading to respiratory depression or a drug-induced cardiac event. The sheer volume and combination of depressants seemed impossible to ignore as a potential direct cause. Conflicting expert opinions. Almost immediately, other pathologists and toxicologists began questioning the official narrative. They argued that even if no single drug was present in a dose typically considered lethal on its own, the synergistic effect of combining so many central nervous system depressants, opioids, barbiturates, sedatives, could absolutely be fatal. Dr. Cyril Wecht, a prominent forensic pathologist who later reviewed the case for an investigation by ABC's 2020, famously stated that the drug combination was lethal and the primary cause of death. The haste of the announcement. The initial cause of death was announced relatively quickly after the autopsy, before the full detailed toxicology results were available. This led to accusations that the announcement was rushed, possibly to protect Elvis's image, or perhaps due to pressure from the family or estate, who preferred a narrative of natural causes over one centered on drug abuse. Sealed autopsy report. The Presley family, exercising their legal right, had the official autopsy report sealed shortly after its completion. It remained sealed for decades, only adding to the speculation and conspiracy theories. While summaries and findings were discussed publicly, often leading to more confusion, the full document's unavailability fueled distrust and the belief that something was being hidden. Portions have since been revealed through investigations and legal proceedings, but the initial secrecy cast a long shadow. Dr. Nicopoulos's role. The immense quantity of drugs prescribed by Elvis's personal physician, Dr. George Nicopoulos, Dr. Nick, inevitably drew scrutiny. If the death was purely from natural causes, why the need for such extreme levels of medication? The focus on Dr. Nick's prescribing habits suggested that the drugs were a major problem, contradicting the initial natural causes emphasis. Elvis's visible decline. Fans and the public had witnessed Elvis's declining health and erratic performances in the preceding months. His obesity, lethargy, and reliance on medications were widely rumored, if not openly discussed. The idea that his death was solely due to an unexpected heart arrhythmia, unrelated to his lifestyle and drug intake, seemed implausible to many observers. The immediate questioning of the official cause of death set the stage for years of debate. While the initial statement pointed to cardiac arrhythmia, subsequent investigations, expert reviews, and the revelations about the extent of his drug use and underlying health problems, like severe constipation and megacolon, which could trigger cardiac strain, painted a much more complex picture. The controversy highlighted the difficulty in pinpointing a single cause when multiple severe health issues and heavy prescription drug use collide. It ensured that the precise why behind Elvis's death remained a subject of intense discussion long after the king was laid to rest. Number 6. His personal doctor prescribed over 10,000 doses in just months. One of the most staggering and controversial figures associated with Elvis Presley's final years is Dr. George Nichopoulos, universally known as Dr. Nick. He was Elvis's personal physician, friend, and a near-constant presence, especially on tour. While Dr. Nick maintained he always acted in Elvis's best interest, the sheer volume of medications he prescribed to the star raised serious ethical and medical questions, culminating in investigations and legal battles after Elvis's death. Investigations revealed the astonishing extent of Dr. Nick's prescriptions for Elvis. In the last 8 months of Elvis's life alone, from January 1977 to August 1977, Dr. Nichopoulos reportedly prescribed over 10,000 doses of various potent medication. This included sedatives, amphetamines, barbiturates, narcotics, laxatives, sleeping pills, and hormones. The list comprised many of the same drugs found in Elvis's system at the time of his death, such as Quaaludes, Valium, various barbiturates, and painkillers like Dilaudid and Protodan, though codeine, found prominently in the autopsy, might have been prescribed by his dentist shortly before death. These weren't just isolated prescriptions. Dr. Nick often traveled with Elvis, carrying medical bags filled with drugs to administer as needed for sleep before a show, for energy during a performance, for pain relief afterward, or simply to manage Elvis's day-to-day complaints and dependency. He prescribed drugs not only under Elvis's name, but also under the names of various aides, employees, and even Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie, ostensibly for members of the entourage, but often intended for Elvis himself, likely to avoid leaving a direct paper trail of the massive quantities Elvis was consuming. Why would a doctor prescribe such vast amounts of potentially dangerous medications? Dr. Nick's defense, maintained throughout subsequent investigations and trials, was complex. He argued Elvis suffered from multiple legitimate and severe health problems, including glaucoma, hypertension, a twisted colon, megacolon, and chronic pain from various ailments and injuries. He claimed the prescriptions were necessary to manage these conditions. Furthermore, Dr. Nick contended that Elvis was adept at manipulating doctors and obtaining drugs from multiple sources. He asserted that by becoming Elvis's primary physician and controlling the prescriptions, even in massive quantities, he was actually trying to manage and reduce Elvis's intake, preventing him from doctor shopping and potentially obtaining even more dangerous combinations elsewhere. He claimed he often substituted placebos for active drugs without Elvis's knowledge in an attempt to wean him off certain substances. He portrayed himself not as an enabler, but as someone caught in an impossible situation, trying to help a powerful and demanding patient who was already severely dependent on prescription medication. However, state medical boards and legal authorities took a different view. The Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners investigated Dr. Nick's practices. In 1980, they found him guilty of unethical conduct and overprescribing not only to Elvis, but also to other celebrity patients like Jerry Lee Lewis, and temporarily suspended his medical license. He appealed and got it reinstated. Later, in 1981, Dr. Nick faced criminal charges for indiscriminately prescribing controlled substances to Elvis and others. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence of the thousands of doses prescribed. Dr. Nick's defense reiterated his claims of trying to control Elvis's addiction and manage legitimate pain. Several character witnesses, including members of Elvis's entourage, testified on his behalf, portraying him as a caring physician overwhelmed by Elvis's demands and complex health issues. Ultimately, the jury acquitted Dr. Nick of the criminal charges, perhaps persuaded that his intentions were not malicious, even if his methods were highly unorthodox, and ultimately failed to save his famous patient. Despite the acquittal, The Tennessee Medical Board permanently revoked Dr. Nicopolis's medical license in 1995, citing his long history of overprescription. The sheer number 10,000 doses in under a year remains a shocking statistic, emblematic of the extreme prescription drug culture surrounding Elvis Presley and a central element in the tragedy of his final years. It draws the complex relationship between a dependent star and his physician, and the devastating consequences of unchecked polypharmacy. Number 5. A severe, chronic constipation problem played a role. Beyond the headlines about drugs and heart issues, a less discussed but potentially crucial factor contributing to Elvis Presley's death was his struggle with severe chronic constipation, likely linked to a condition called megacolon. While it might seem like a relatively minor or even embarrassing ailment in Elvis's case, it was reported debilitating and could have played a direct role in the cardiac event that ended his life. Megacolon is a condition characterized by an abnormal dilation, widening, of the colon, large intestine, often accompanied by paralysis of the peristaltic movements that normally propel waste through the bowel. This leads to infrequent bowel movements, severe constipation, abdominal distension, pain, and the accumulation of impacted fecal matter. It can be congenital, present from birth, or acquired later in life due to various factors, including nerve or muscle damage, chronic laxative abuse, certain infections, or inflammatory bowel disease. In Elvis's case, the exact cause isn't definitively stated in public records, but it's widely believed to have been an acquired condition, severely aggravated by his poor diet and long-term use of medications, particularly Pomex, which are notorious for causing constipation. Reports from those close to Elvis and findings suggested by medical reviews indicate his constipation was extreme. He might go for weeks or even months without a normal bowel movement, leading to significant discomfort, bloating, and reliance on a cocktail of laxatives and enemas. This chronic condition would have had several detrimental effects on his overall health. Physical discomfort and pain, constant bloating and abdominal pressure would have contributed to his general malaise and reliance on painkillers. Toxin absorption. The prolonged retention of fecal matter could potentially lead to the absorption of toxins back into the bloodstream, contributing to feelings of lethargy and illness. Nutritional issues, impaired bowel function, can interfere with nutrient absorption. Straining and cardiac risk. This is perhaps the most critical link to his death. The act of straining intensely to have a bowel movement known as the Valsalva maneuver can dramatically affect heart rate and blood pressure. Holding one's breath and bearing down increases pressure within the chest cavity, which initially decreases blood flow back to the heart, lowering blood pressure. When the strain is released, blood rushes back, causing a rapid surge in heart rate and blood pressure. In someone with a compromised cardiovascular system, Elvis had an enlarged heart, cardiomegaly, and hypertension. This sudden fluctuation can trigger a fatal cardiac arrhythmia or heart attack. The circumstances of Elvis's death, being found unresponsive on the bathroom floor near the toilet, strongly support the theory that he may have suffered a cardiac event while straining. This theory, sometimes referred to as commode death syndrome in medical literature, posits that the physical exertion of trying to defecate, compounded by his severe constipation and underlying heart conditions, was the trigger for the fatal arrhythmia. Some accounts suggest that an autopsy finding revealed compacted fecal matter in his colon, estimated to be 4 or 5 months old. While the official autopsy report remains sealed, this detail has been mentioned by individuals claiming knowledge of the findings or involved in later reviews. If true, it courts the extreme severity of his condition. The megacolon and chronic constipation were likely exacerbated by his high-fat, low-fiber diet, and crucially his heavy use of opium painkillers like codeine, morphine, dilaudid, and percodan, all of which slow down bowel motility significantly. It created a vicious cycle. Pain led to opine use, which caused constipation, which caused more pain and discomfort, potentially leading to more drug use and reliance on harsh laxatives, further disrupting normal bowel function. While the drugs undoubtedly played a massive role, focusing solely on them overlooks the critical impact of his underlying physical ailments. The severe constipation, potentially linked to megacolon, wasn't just an uncomfortable side effect. It was a serious medical condition that likely created the physiological circumstances, the intense straining that could have triggered the final fatal event in his already compromised heart. It's a stark reminder that Elvis's death was likely a confluence of multiple factors: lifestyle, polypharmacy, and severe interconnected health problems. Number 4. The autopsy report was sealed by his family. One of the most significant contributors to the enduring mystery and speculation surrounding Elvis Presley's death is the fact that his official autopsy report was sealed by his family shortly after its completion. This legal maneuver, while within the family's rights, effectively shut down public access to the complete detailed medical findings, fueling decades of questions, rumors, and conspiracy theories. The autopsy was performed at Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis on the afternoon of August 16, 1977, just hours after Elvis was pronounced dead. A team of pathologists conducted the examination led by Dr. E. Eric Muirhead, head of the hospital's pathology department. The Shelby County Medical Examiner, Dr. Jerry Francisco, was present as an observer and later made the initial public statements about the cause of death, cardiac arrhythmia, downplaying the role of drugs before the full toxicology results were even available. Following the completion of the autopsy and the subsequent toxicology tests, a final report was compiled. This document contained detailed findings about the state of Elvis's organs, microscopic examination, results, measurements, weights, and the full list of substances detected in his blood and tissues, along with their concentration. It represented the most comprehensive medical account of his physical condition at the time of death. However, Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, acting as the executor of his estate, made the decision to have this official report legally sealed. Tennessee law, like that in many states, considers autopsy reports private medical records, and the next of kin typically have the authority to control their release. Vernon's motivations remain debated. The most common explanation is that he sought to protect Elvis's privacy and legacy, wanting to shield his son's image from the full, potentially sordid details of his prescription drug dependence and severe health problems. He may have preferred the narrative of a sudden heart attack over one explicitly detailing death by drug overdose or complications from drug abuse. Some speculate there might have been pressure to avoid details that could lead to lawsuits or tarnish the lucrative Elvis brand. Whatever the reason, the sealing of the report had immediate and long-lasting consequences. It meant that the official primary source document detailing the medical evidence was off-limits to the press, independent researchers, and the public. Information about the autopsy findings emerged piecemeal, often through leaks, statements by individuals involved, which sometimes contradicted each other, summaries released during legal proceedings, like Dr. Nick's trial, or investigations by journalists. This fragmented and sometimes conflicting information only deepened the confusion and suspicion. The lack of access to the full report allowed various theories to flourish. Some questioned whether the initial finding of cardiac arrhythmia was accurate, or merely a convenient explanation. Others focused intensely on the drug findings reported by toxicologists, arguing they proved a drug overdose was the primary cause. Still others pointed to the severe constipation and megacolon theory. Conspiracy theories, including the persistent myth that Elvis faked his death, also found fertile ground in the absence of definitive, publicly accessible proof. Over the years, some details have become public through secondary sources or legal disclosures. For instance, investigations like the one conducted for ABC News' 2020 program in 1979 involved pathologists who reviewed the available evidence, though not necessarily the full sealed report itself, and concluded that drugs were indeed the primary factor. Testimony during Dr. Nichipulse's trial also brought certain findings into the public record. However, the complete original document remains under seal reportedly until 2027, 50 years after Elvis's death, unless the family chooses to release it sooner. This continued secrecy means that while a general consensus exists among many medical professionals based on the available evidence, pointing to polypharmacy exacerbating severe underlying health conditions, the ultimate primary source document remains inaccessible. The decision to seal the autopsy report, intended perhaps to protect Elvis's memory, inadvertently ensured that the exact circumstances of his death would remain shrouded in a layer of official mystery, contributing significantly to the shocking and endlessly debated nature of his passing. Number 3. His body was moved from its original burial site. Elvis Presley's funeral was a massive event, drawing tens of thousands of grieving fans to Memphis. Following the service on August 18, 1977, his body was interred in a mausoleum at Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis, alongside his beloved mother, Gladys Presley, who had died in 1958. This seemed like a final, albeit grand, resting place for the king of rock and roll. However, this arrangement lasted less than 2 months. In a shocking turn of events that highlighted the intense, almost fanatical nature of some of his fan base, an attempt was made to tamper with Elvis's grave. In late August 1977, just weeks after the burial, police arrested 3 men near the cemetery mausoleum. Reports indicated they were attempting to break into the crypt with the alleged motive of stealing Elvis's body. Some speculated the motive was ransom. Others thought it might be a macabre form of memorabilia collecting. While the attempt was thwarted before the crypt itself was breached, the incident sent shockwaves through the Presley family and the estate managers. This gruesome event made it terrifyingly clear that Elvis's resting place, even within a secure mausoleum in a public cemetery, was not safe from determined intruders or obsessive fans. The potential for future desecration, attempts, vandalism, or even successful body snatching was deemed too high a risk. The security concerns became paramount. Vernon Presley, already devastated by his son's death, was faced with the disturbing reality that Elvis might not be able to rest in peace. As a result, a difficult and highly unusual decision was made. Elvis's body, along with that of his mother Gladys, would be moved from Forest Hill Cemetery to a more secure location. The chosen site was Graceland itself, Elvis's cherished home. Obtaining the necessary permits for burial on private residential property required navigating zoning laws and city regulations, a process that was expedited given the extraordinary circumstances and Elvis's iconic status. On October 2, 1977, under conditions of secrecy and security, the bodies of Elvis and Gladys Presley were exhumed from the mausoleum at Forest Hill Cemetery. They were then transported back to Graceland and reinterred in the Meditation Garden, an area on the south side of the mansion that Elvis himself had designated as a place for quiet reflection. It was already a special spot on the property featuring statues, columns, and a fountain. A permanent memorial was constructed, including grave markers for Elvis Gladys, his father Vernon, who died in 1979, and his grandmother, Minnie Mae Presley, who died in 1980. Later, a memorial stone for Elvis's stillborn twin brother, Jesse Garon, was also added. The Meditation Garden became the final resting place for the Presley family members. This move achieved the primary goal of significantly enhancing security. Graceland was private property, already equipped with security personnel and infrastructure, making it much harder for unauthorized individuals to access the gravesites. It also had an unintended, though perhaps foreseen, consequence. It turned Graceland not just into a museum dedicated to Elvis's life, but also into his final resting place, a site of pilgrimage for millions of fans from around the world. Visitors who tour Graceland today end their visit in the Meditation Garden, paying their respects at the graves. The necessity of moving Elvis's body from its initial burial site due to a grave-robbing attempt is a shocking testament to the extreme nature of his fame and the obsessive behavior it sometimes inspired. It's a bizarre and unsettling chapter in the aftermath of his death, ensuring that even in burial the king of rock and roll remained subject to the extraordinary pressures and dangers that accompanied his legendary status. The peaceful garden at Graceland became his fortress against a world that couldn't quite let him go. Number 2. Initial attempts to revive him may have been flawed. When Elvis Presley was discovered unresponsive on his bathroom floor by his fiancée, Ginger Alden, around 1:30 p.m. on August 16, 1977, a frantic effort began to save his life. However, piecing together accounts from those chaotic moments suggests that the initial resuscitation attempts, both before and immediately after emergency services arrived, may have been hampered by panic, lack of coordination, and possibly the state of Elvis's body itself, adding another layer of tragedy to the event. Ginger Alden first alerted Al Strada, a Graceland aide, and Joe Esposito, Elvis's close friend and road manager. Esposito rushed to the scene, and seeing Elvis face down on the carpet, attempted basic first aid. He reportedly tried to turn Elvis over, slapped his back, and checked for breathing, finding none. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Esposito instructed Strada to call for an ambulance immediately. While waiting for paramedics, Esposito and others, including Elvis's personal physician, Dr. George Nicobos, who was summoned urgently, attempted cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. However, descriptions of these efforts suggest they might have been less effective than hoped. Elvis's significant weight, estimated over 250 pounds, possibly much more, would have made performing chest compressions and rescue breathing extremely difficult. Moving him, or even properly positioning him for effective CPR, would have been a challenge. Furthermore, the state of his body indicated he might have been deceased for some time before discovery. His face was reportedly discolored and purplish, and his body was stiffening, suggesting rigor mortis might have already begun to set in. If this was the case, CPR attempts would have been futile, as irreversible brain damage occurs within minutes of oxygen deprivation. The exact time of death remains uncertain, but he was last seen alive between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. when he went into the bathroom, meaning several hours could have passed before he was found. When the Memphis Fire Department paramedics arrived, reportedly within minutes of the call, they took over resuscitation efforts. They faced the same challenges. Elvis's size, the likely time elapsed since collapse, and the potential presence of rigor mortis. They worked on him intensely, administering oxygen, continuing CPR, and preparing him for transport. Accounts differ slightly on whether paramedics detected any faint signs of life, like a weak pulse or electrical activity in the heart, pulseless electrical activity, but most agree he was essentially unresponsive and showed no clear signs of breathing or circulation. Despite the grim prognosis, Elvis was rushed by ambulance to the emergency room at Baptist Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where his mother had died. The journey itself was frantic. In the ER, a full team of doctors and nurses launched an all-out resuscitation effort. They employed advanced cardiac life support measures, including intubation, inserting a breathing tube, intravenous lines for medication delivery, defibrillation, electric shocks to try and restart the heart, and continued chest compressions. Dr. Nichols was present, providing medical history, including the potent medications Elvis had been taking, which would have been crucial information for the treating physicians. However, despite nearly 30 minutes of aggressive resuscitation attempts in the emergency room by a highly skilled team, there was no response. No heartbeat was restored. No breathing resumed. The medical team ultimately concluded that further efforts were futile. Elvis Presley was officially pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. on August 16, 1977. While the paramedics and hospital staff undoubtedly did everything possible, according to standard emergency protocols, the combination of factors, the potential delay in discovery, Elvis's severe underlying health issues, the massive amounts of depressant drugs in his system, and the sheer physical difficulty of performing effective CPR on him, the initial, potentially flawed or hampered attempts at Graceland, born of panic and the shock of the discovery, likely made little difference given the circumstances. However, the narrative of those first frantic moments, the chaos and desperation surrounding the sudden, unexpected collapse of a global icon, and the tragic realization that even the king could not be saved. Number 1. He was found face down on the bathroom floor. The single most shocking and indelible image surrounding Elvis Presley's death is the circumstance of his discovery. The king of rock and roll, a man synonymous with explosive energy and dazzling stage presence, was found collapsed and unresponsive, face down on the floor of his opulent bathroom suite at Graceland. This stark, private, and ultimately undignified end stands in jarring contrast to his public persona and the adoration of millions. Around 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August 16, 1977, Elvis's fiancée, Ginger Alden, awoke in the master bedroom. Realizing Elvis hadn't returned from the bathroom, where he'd gone hours earlier, saying he was going to read, she went looking for him. She knocked on the bathroom door and, getting no response, opened it. What she saw was horrifying. Elvis was lying motionless on the thick shag carpet near the toilet. He was face down, his body contorted. He was wearing pajama bottoms, the top apparently pulled up or off. His face was dark, purplish, and swollen, indicating a lack of oxygen and possible lividity, the pooling of blood after death. His body appeared stiff. It was immediately clear. Something was terribly wrong. Ginger screamed, alerting members of the household staff. The location, the bathroom, immediately fueled speculation and became a key detail in the narrative. Elvis's bathroom suite at Graceland was not a small, utilitarian room. It was reportedly a lavish, expansive space, decorated in reds and blacks, featuring a large sunken bathtub, gold-plated fixtures, comfortable seating, a telephone, and reading materials. It functioned almost as a private sanctuary or lounge for him, a place he retreated to for privacy and solitude, often for extended periods. Particularly when trying to read or avoid disturbances, his choice to go there to read in the early morning hours was not, in itself, unusual for his habits. However, being found on the floor near the toilet strongly suggested a sudden incapacitating event occurred while he was potentially using the toilet or standing nearby. This ties directly into the theories surrounding his severe constipation and the possibility that straining, the Valsalva maneuver, triggered a fatal cardiac arrhythmia. The position, face down, suggests a sudden collapse forward. Some accounts mention vomit or fluid near his face, possibly indicating regurgitation during the event, or as a terminal process. The image is deeply unsettling because it strips away the glamour and invincibility associated with Elvis. It's a profoundly human, vulnerable, and starkly physical end. The king died alone, in a private moment, in circumstances far removed from the cheering crowds and stage lights. The discovery by his young fiancée adds another layer of tragedy. This specific detail, found on the bathroom floor, became headline news around the world. It cemented the tragic nature of his decline and death in the public imagination. While official statements focused on cardiac arrhythmia and later reports detailed the drug cocktail and underlying health issues, the simple, stark fact of where and how he was found remains one of the most powerful and shocking elements of the story. It symbolizes the collapse, not just of a man, but potentially of an image meticulously crafted over decades. It's the grounding, grim reality behind the myth, a final, silent scene that spoke volumes about the private struggles hidden behind the gates of Graceland. The king had left the building, but his final moments occurred in the most private and unexpected of settings,